Netflix has come a long way from the direct DVD mailing service to the dominant streaming juggernaut on the internet.
Blockbuster sends its regards.
In that time, it's produced a number of iconic original series that eventually became the brand holders for the network. Despite Kevin Spacey's best effort to take the entire empire down with him,
I know what you want.
the iconic Dun Dun is still based on Frank Underwood's knocking on the Oval Office desk with a ring. Once House of Cards became a nightmare, their brand ambassador's salvation came in the form of hardcore 80s nostalgia with Stranger Things.
You're with me.
You're not really here.
A bad season and a number of the cast going hardcore Palestinians or subhumans who deserve died.
Hey, fake woke Americans. Guess who actually lives on stolen land? You do. Guess who actually lives on stolen land? You do. You do. You do. Me, Jew, you do.
May have jaded a lesser company, but Netflix already had a completely different mega hit on their hands. Korean cinema came to the rescue with the game of Squid. There's something really eerie about the opening of Season 2 with the beautifully incorporated Netflix logo through the MC Escher-inspired staircase with the iconic pink and blue foreboding steps. Sure, K-pop and Korean films had already started to take over North American culture, but Squid Games was just the perfect blend of violent horror and social commentary. Influenced or inspired by similar works such as Battle Royale and The Matrix, Squid Game did the rare feat of commercializing a concept that was deeply uncommercial.
Matrix.
It worked on multiple levels, from the striking visual PlayStation controller Nazi guards to the childhood soundtrack and aesthetics. But what made it work most of all was both a captivating script and performances from a stellar cast.
아스테이크. 아, 그랬구나.
For the unfamiliar, the series follows a cast of unlikely heroes united in their struggles with debt, poverty, and more generally capitalism. From gamblers to businessmen, everyone who finds themselves playing in the deadly game of Squid is at their wits' end, and this twisted game is their last chance at salvation. They'll play simple childhood games from their past, with the only catch being that victory could mean tens of millions of dollars, and loss means certain death.
제발 한 번만 더.
Rich people making poor people be modern-day gladiators for their sick amusement, for no other purpose than their boredom, making it so perverse that both Netflix and MrBeast saw the whole thing and thought, hey, I should do that. MrBeast has had a rough year. Despite posting that he did a thing, which, if your way of announcing to the world that you found love and happiness happens to be like this, odds are it's how you view everything else in life, as a transaction, has been mired in a series of controversies after being exposed for having files and racists on the staff, being okay with their profoundly inappropriate behavior towards other employees and contestants, rigging both his games and doing illegal lotteries to promote his brand, and even torturing human beings for fun and profit.
Yeah, they get psych in and talk to the psych about how I'm not well. And like I said, there was a lot of good people over there that was saying, you gotta pull him out. They turned the lights off. And they brought, it's like they brought in all my friends, you know, to make it.
He's gone from less of the altruistic Willy Wonka that he wanted to brand himself as, and more of the actual Willy Wonka, torturing his Oompa Loompas and competitors to make hundreds of millions of dollars.
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
While he struggles to convince the world that he's just a regular Jesus, who has no emotion behind his dead eye. Combined with him launching the biggest budget game show competition in history and it being a complete flop because, surprise, surprise, people who watch Amazon Prime aren't a bunch of minors who are willing to accept his complete lack of charisma for explosions and gratuitous waste. Despite trying, MrBeast couldn't make the Squid Game a reality both times he tried. Somehow, this sick piece of shit saw the TV series about rich elites making poor unfortunate souls literally die for their entertainment and thought, hey, I should do that. Not once, but twice. To be fair and or balanced, neither series required contestants to literally die, only metaphorically, inside, like him. But he wasn't the only one. Netflix itself seemed to have the same moment of zen. Seeing the enormous popularity of the runaway hit, they thought to themselves, well, we got a few years before a greenlit second season of the show is coming out. You know what we should do in the meantime? Capitalism, Maxine.
The contestants, represented by a UK law firm, have begun legal action to sue the production company Studio Lambert and Netflix for subjecting them to horrific conditions. These contestants mentioned that the issue centers around the red light game, where they fell ill after standing still or bending for hours under the cold temperature. This has caused one of the contestants to suffer from hypothermia.
Yet despite their best efforts, both out-of-touch corporate elites couldn't ruin what would become of the second season of the show. Because at its core, Hwang Dong-hyuk is an artist. Squid Games, despite being the Mickey Mouse or Sonic the Hedgehog of Netflix, is the intersection between creative expression and corporate branding. The creator of the series was inspired to make it during deep financial hardship experienced by both himself and his family. Having difficulty finding work, he found comfort in comics like Battle Royale and Liar Game. The script for Squid Game was rejected for 10 years, and he ended up having to sell his laptop for a mere $675 just to be able to afford to live. He had asked himself at this point in his life if he would do anything for money.
This is a story about losers, he once said. I wanted to write a story that was an allegory or fable about our modern capitalist society, something that depicts the extreme competition of life. But I wanted it to use the kind of characters we've all met in real life.
And manifested a nightmare where capitalists watch the working class compete to death for their own amusement. Despite failed screenwriters like Ben Shapiro struggling to understand the reality of this premise,
To assume that the rich people are bad and the poor people are somehow good. The same thing sort of holds true in this show. In this show, all of the poor people are perceived as sort of innately more noble than the people who are rich, even though the reality is that the poor people in the show, aside from the North Korean refugee, like the main character is a derelict gambler.
or Tim Pool pretzeling his beanie so tight that it cut off all blood to his brain in order to claim the whole thing was about communism.
Thing is the perfect example of somebody who thinks they're opposing capitalism, but just makes communism and wokeness look really, really dumb.
It's nearly impossible to miss the message of the series.
재미로 그런 짓을 시켰다고?
And yet, life finds a way. Fucking twice. So 3 years pass, and suddenly the highly anticipated sequel to the first season is released in a very different world. Not economically, wealth only concentrated more into the hands of the super rich globally in the interim. In 2024, Oxfam released a report showing that 1% of the world's richest people now control the combined assets of the other 99% of the planet. And Netflix now controls nearly 22% of the entire streaming market share. So, being Squid Games Netflix presents Squid Games on Netflix with extra squid, could lightning in a bottle strike twice? The answer, dear viewer, is while the second season of the show doesn't have the same bullet in the head on a red light, it manages to be even more critical and complex in its criticism of capitalism than the first season. I suppose now is the mandatory spoiler warning for the first episode of Season 2, and some Season 1 spoilers in there as well for good measure, but I mean, you should really watch the show. He's gone from friendly social goofball to traumatized PTSD-ridden soldier. Rather than take his winnings from beating the games and living a life of luxury with his daughter, played by the timelessly handsome Gong Yoo, recruiting new players for the upcoming season. Realizing that the games will continue to murder and torture people unless they're stopped, he goes into full Batman mode, using his wealth and assets to track down, much like our ever-online smartphones promised us more freedom, but instead make us responsible for answering work emails 24/7 from any corner of the world. He decides to play some miniature tests, presumably on his own dollar. I'll explain why later. Then he heads to the park to find folk presumably living on the street and make them an offer. Russian roulette. The classic fatalist spectacle popularized by Vietnam films portraying soldiers who would gamble for their lives at the chance of earning some money, secretly hoping for death, as life at this point, of being part of a colonial force brutalizing and torturing Vietnamese people, had lost all meaning. The D did a spoiler warning, fuck off. And while his death at the end of the episode most likely pissed off most fans of Gong Yu's incredibly limited performance in the series, not to mention the horny, at the end of their confrontation, the salesman reveals that he started out as a low-level grunt working for the games.
같은 사람들의 시체를 수도 없이 치우고 태웠죠. 이것들은 사람이 아니다. 이 세상에서 아무짝에 쓸모없는
Harvesting the bodies for organs of the perished players and thinking them as he was taught to by the upper class as trash. Much like how bosses and CEOs train their managers to think of low-level employees as expendable because while they themselves might not be upper management, they believe in the greater purpose of the company.
게임에서 탈락한 놈을 쏘려고 하는데, 어? 이게 얼굴이 낯이 익은 거예요. 누군지 알아요? 우리 아빠.
You aren't working for a corporation. You're part of a family. As soon as he was promoted to assassin, he felt that his life finally had meaning. He would do whatever the company wanted and became exceedingly good at killing the players who failed at the game. The salesman you see is a true believer, both in the games themselves and the necessary hierarchies that capitalism creates. Most people are trash. Most people are scum. He believes in the decency and humanity of people, that they're not trash, that the system is rigged against him, and given the opportunity, they will help one another, that it's the twisted capitalist system that causes us all to compete with one another. And in that game, we lose humanity itself, and will even kill each other if pushed far enough. He had this belief reaffirmed in the final moments of Season 1, where the creator of the games challenges him to a final wager, that no one will be able to save a helpless man lying before him freezing to death, and in his final breaths, loses that bet to Song.
왔어. 사람이 왔어. 화면을 뒤집어 쓰고 주인님이 시키는 대로 뛰고 짖고 꼬리나 흔드는.
He could use the gun on him, pulled the trigger, and cheated the game. But doing so has to have him admit that he has no real freedom under the system, that he will forever be a dog to the rich, wagging his tail, wearing a mask to hide his shame, because no one is truly free under capitalism. We're all just dogs to our masters, telling us what to do. In this moment, they're both true believers in their own philosophy and will die to defend it.
This is an important announcement. The video is only half over, but we have to interrupt what you're doing. If you are enjoying this video, then you have a legal obligation to like and subscribe to the Serfs channel. And if you don't like it, then you have to leave a comment and explain why. Of course, turning on the bell icon for notification helps enormously as well. And if you want to see the full version of this video uncensored and get bonus content and support documentaries to be made like this one, please go to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com/theserfs. For only $1, you can unlock everything and help make more content. Back to the show.
There's a never-ending conflict when it comes to commercially successful commodities that critique the capitalist system, yet are produced from within it. Major motion pictures that require millions of dollars to be made, employing thousands of people to produce, and eventually make billions more for the studios that funded them. This also relates to the difficulty of producing art in general for a capitalist studio or record company, whereas the demand to release a commercially successful product always trumps the desire that any creative team might have to release that art. It's a struggle that has plagued numerous creatives throughout history. Stanley Kubrick famously had enormous difficulties securing funding for 2001: A Space Odyssey due to its unconventional narrative format, surreal visuals, and haunting direction. Eventually, he would demand and win complete creative control, something rarely afforded to artists, and the end result became one of the most influential films in cinematic history. Conversely, David Lynch's ambitions for adapting Frank Herbert's Dune to the silver screen got consistently meddled with by the studios, who didn't understand his vision and wanted a more commercially viable product at a smaller price, which led to an adaptation that disappointed everyone, including Lynch himself.
And so it's, again, money talking and not for the film at all. And so it was like compacted, and it hurt it. It hurt it.
So I kept asking myself, how is Hwang Dong-hyuk going to return with the second season of Squid Game after everything that's happened? After the first season of the show had not only been completely bastardized by monsters like MrBeast, but by the studio itself with the ridiculous Squid Games The Challenge. How do you explore capitalist exploitation and commercialization through the biggest commercial product in a capitalist exploiting beast like Netflix? How do you meet rabid fans' expectations for a show that was so culturally significant that it reached all corners of the world and actually forced Americans to read for the first time? Because deep down, Hwang is an artist, not just an entertainer. MrBeast is an entertainer and not an artist. Jimmy saw a bunch of horrifying action sequences and multicolored walls sprayed with the blood of poor people for entertainment of the rich, and knew that he had to recreate it. Because to him, that's all it was. A spectacle. Frankly, he has no soul.
이유가 있는 사람이 나가는 게 맞잖아. 그게 맞잖아.
It doesn't hurt.
He never experienced anything beyond the addictive Korean children's nursery rhymes or the smashing glass. He just saw another idea that he could rip off and turn into a contest. He's a hyper-capitalist who sees humanity as trash. Trash that he can exploit and turn into entertainment. Jimmy is both the salesman and the VIP members and the old man who doesn't have any hope for humanity. He just sees us as a bunch of exploitable numbers that he can churn into entertainment, hoping that you keep watching his videos, or his TV shows, or eating his shitty burgers or chocolate, and believing that he's an altruistic, benevolent billionaire trying to save the world and give people eyesight. I actually got into a personal fight with MrBeast online for criticizing his particular form of PT Barnerism.
Most people get mad and say this is a bad way to get views. Tell them, like, you're okay with this. Are you okay with it?
Hell yeah.
That's right, YouTube.
Best day of my life, right here.
Homeless people don't care if I use them for views.
That he exploits horrifying realities that human beings have to live through, like experiencing torture at the hands of solitary confinement.
Get the boost and I want the cash, and so I start running at 12. I was able to take some breaks, and I asked him, how long do I have? He goes, until I get back. And I'm running until 3 a.m. All right, I got off the treadmill. Oh, the blisters I had on my feet were like, you wouldn't believe, just all over, just these big red. I couldn't walk. My muscles were like just the lactic acid. I got off the treadmill, and then the people that came in to like ice my feet, make sure I was good. Then that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out.
Or thinking that it's even appropriate to turn that into a form of entertainment. That he'll use moments where people break down and cry upon receiving vast amounts of cash because suddenly they can afford a life-saving cancer treatment or surgery.
Do you want 10 grand though?
Yes, I would love it.
Here you go. We're not actually gonna make her quit her job. Oh, you're crying?
We just found out my grandma had stage 4 cancer.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's just God way of working things out. Like, this is such a blessing.
Now we're on a football field.
Or save a family member. Or even filming thousands of people suddenly gaining the ability to see for the first time. The thing is, he needs people to have disabilities, or be poor, or be desperate to have his show. If he actually tried to use his endless wealth and resources to change the system, he wouldn't have anyone to exploit. I wouldn't be able to do the MrBeast gives 1,000 people eyesight, not only because I don't have the money, but because it's already paid for out of our public healthcare system. I already know friends and family members who've received that exact surgery and paid nothing out of pocket because of public healthcare. He depends on no one realizing what's really going on, that they have to stay pacified and entertained, because then billions of us stay complicit and scared and desperate. so he can play another game.
Now wait, I hear you say, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck am I? Who the fuck am I? I'm Lance, the surfy guy. But you're probably asking, who am I to criticize MrBeast for giving, say, 1,000 people eyesight? How many people have I given eyesight to? Well, I'll have you know, at least one, okay? My partner. She needed LASIK surgery, which, yeah, is technically elective surgery, but whatever. I did pay for it, and so I mean, if we were looking at the scoreboard, I guess MrBeast has 1,000. Jesus, according to the New Testament, has 7, and I guess I can say 0.5, 0.5, because again, it was elective. So there, take that.
Look, my problem with MrBeast was never that he helped people see for the first time, or helped them walk for the first time, or helped them get drinking water. Those are all obviously really good things that people with money should be doing. It's that he does it to turn it all into a TV show. That while he might release statements saying things should change, and that really it's ultimately sad that someone as noble as him has to do this, ultimately, he does nothing in terms of using his platform to do that.
I don't know what the answer is, but I wanted to say this so the 100 million people watching this can get inspired, because what I saw when filming this video is just obviously not okay.
He's done absolutely no episodes of his show talking about how to enact a public healthcare system in the US or holding private insurance companies to account. He's never canvassed for, platformed, or funded a politician that's fighting for Medicare for all. It's all just part of an act. MrBeast could mobilize his audience into becoming advocates for and activists to change the predatory for-profit healthcare system in the US, but instead asked them to restock his chocolate in stores and be brand ambassadors for his candy. Candy, which incidentally makes people more unhealthy. Everything he does is a scam. His hashtag Team C's Ocean Cleanup Project that removed thousands of pounds of plastic from the ocean, it was sponsored by Coca-Cola, the world's leading plastic bottle manufacturer and polluter.
There's up to 150 million tons of plastic in the ocean, much of which is small microplastics which just cannot be removed like this, if at all, and we add another 8 million tons each year, a figure that continues to rise. Team C's stated goal to remove 13,600 tons is, quite literally, a drop in the ocean.
Ocean conservation environmentalists have pointed out that the idea of taking a fraction of the ocean's plastics out, while companies like Coca-Cola produce plastic waste at such a high rate and volume, makes the whole thing just a PR stunt. What about when he gives thousands of pounds of free food to people in need? Well, the fact that they're fed is great, but those events are directly sponsored by monopolistic corporations and serve primarily as commercials for their products.
They gave us 10,000 turkeys to give away at this food drive, so I forbid you from buying a turkey from any other brand for this Thanksgiving.
What about when he took time during COVID to save small restaurants by launching his MrBeast burger chains, allowing mom and pop operations to survive through a difficult time when people weren't able to eat out?
And Beast Burger, originally why we got into it, is it was like a way for restaurants to make extra money.
Yeah.
So if you're a mom and pop, and you know that lockdowns, you can't even serve people in your fucking restaurant, your revenue just cut in half, you could just start serving Beast Burger, and then anytime anyone within 8 miles places an order, you fulfill it, you get to keep a majority of the revenue.
Well, he actually mass promoted the concept of ghost kitchens, which is where local businesses and restaurants have to mass manufacture multiple different online restaurant foods so they can manipulate DoorDash search results. What used to be your favorite local restaurant now has to make generic sushi, Greek food, Italian, and MrBeast burgers. This hyper-monopolization destroys local businesses and restaurants and also leads to horrifying working conditions for the people who work there.
Exited its Houston market and laid off 5% of its workforce amid low sales and a rash of permitting and safety violations. Let me just look up what safety violations there are. Okay, so I just found this Wall Street Journal article called "Ghost Kitchens Are Proving to be a Messy Business as Reef Global Shows." The article starts by saying a few seconds after a cook turned on a stove in a tiny mobile kitchen in a Houston parking lot in April, a fireball erupted from the propane burners, flaring out into the center of the trailer owned by Reef Global Inc. While the cook escaped harm, she happened to open a refrigerator at the same time that shielded her from the flames. It was the second such incident at the same Houston trailer in 4 months. The first one injured a different cook as flames scorched her face and gave her kind of a warning for this to be kind of violent language, so skip forward 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this.
The guy even hates his own audience. Why else would he push cryptocurrency scams that are only going to make them more poor? He even changes his own thumbnails for his altruism videos to try and manipulate the very people who watch them to get more clicks. And what the hell is with these photoshopped tears? It's all a scam. It's all a trick. It's all a lie to make people on one end think that Jimmy is a benevolent billionaire trying to save the world while ignoring the horrifying reality that he's actively working to make it a worse place for us all to live. Since his early days filming homeless people and taking advantage of their conditions, he's realized that altruism porn is not only highly profitable, but adamantium tier public relations.
But prove me wrong, Mr. Beast. You sick I'm the one throwing down the gauntlet this time. I'm gonna issue you a challenge.
What about instead of filming the next You Give 2,000 people with appendicitis life-saving surgery and then hosting a competition where each contestant has to try and slam dunk their removed appendix for cash, you spend the money on lobbying for Medicare for all? What about platforming and helping a politician fighting for it, knocking on doors to show how grassroots political change can help get people active in trying to make the world better? What if you spoke before Congress and pointed out that it's disgusting that thousands of people have to rely on a YouTuber to get life-changing surgeries when you live in the richest country in the world that spends more than any other developed nation on healthcare, yet gets such abysmal results? Or you could just forgive medical debt. John Oliver did it. On average, $1 spent forgives $100 of medical debt for the poorest Americans suffering under its burden. Organizations like RIP Medical Debt can handle the entire thing, and you can even turn it into content if it's the only way your brain works. But imagine spending $1 million on medical debt and forgiving $100 million that could be life-changing to tens of thousands of people. And what do you get in return? That you actually help change society instead of just profiting off its problems.
And until then, eat shit and
If you're like me, you probably have trouble getting through the day without a delicious cup of coffee. Unfortunately, so much of what is being sold is either exploitative of workers in the global south or helps enrich corporations that fight their workers unionizing or support war crimes overseas. Which is why I'm proud to drink Solstice Coffee. It's the only end-to-end indigenous-owned coffee company in North America. But if buying ethical products isn't your thing, then you'll be happy to know it's not only incredibly delicious, but with the promo code available at serfscoffee.com, you'll not only receive 10% off your orders, but also receive free shipping. A tiny bit of money helps support the Serfs content, and a lot more goes towards a woman-owned coffee company that's trying to make a difference in an otherwise bleak capitalist hellscape. You already drink coffee, so why not drink coffee that's not only delicious, but ethical? Go to serfscoffee.com or type serfs10 over at solsticecoffee.ca and become the best sloth you were meant to be. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This independent series is made entirely possible thanks to our patrons. It was produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bohem, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, and Words Greenwood. Not to mention all the other patrons you now see on screen. We couldn't have done this show without you. If you can help support the show, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus secret episodes as well as get the content before anyone else.